I used to take the subway home. The station near my apartment was close, and I had taken that route so many times that I stopped thinking about it. Late-night trains always had strange people on them. Most were harmless. It was a Tuesday night, after 12:40. The platform was almost empty. When the train came in, I got into the second car because it stopped closest to the exit at my station. There were maybe 5 people inside. An older man asleep near the doors, a student with headphones, a woman on her phone, and a man in a dark jacket sitting across from me with a backpack between his shoes. I noticed him because he wasn't looking at his phone. He was watching everyone's reflections in the window. 2 stops later, most people got off. By the time we left City Hall, it was just me, the sleeping man, and the guy with the backpack. The train dipped underground, and the windows turned black. That was when the man across from me stood up. I thought he was getting off at the next stop. Instead, he reached up and pulled the emergency intercom cover halfway open. Not enough to press it, just enough to make it look damaged. Then he sat back down. The train slowed before Park Street, and a voice came over the speaker saying there was a signal delay. Then we stopped in the tunnel. The lights stayed on, but dimmer than usual. I could hear the fans above us and water dripping somewhere outside the car. The sleeping man didn't move. The guy across from me looked at him, then looked at me. Then he smiled. I pulled out my phone. No service. The man said, "Long night?" I didn't answer. He stood up, looked through the connecting door into the next carriage, then came back and sat 1 seat away from me. There were plenty of empty seats. That was enough for me. I got up and moved toward the far doors. He said, "Relax, I'm not bothering you." I told him I was getting off at the next stop. He nodded like that was funny. We all are. That was when I saw the backpack by his feet was open. Inside were work gloves, duct tape, and a small black device with a wire coming out of it. I walked to the emergency intercom and pressed the button. Nothing happened. The man said, "That one's been broken all week." He said it too quickly, like he already knew. The train jerked forward, then stopped again. This time, the lights flickered, and the speaker cut in and out. Passengers, remain, cars. The man reached into his jacket. I didn't wait to see what he pulled out. I ran to the connecting door and slammed my shoulder into it. Locked. In that moment, it felt like the whole car had been built to keep me there. The man walked toward me slowly. He wasn't rushing, and that scared me more. "Don't make this hard," he said. The sleeping man by the door sat up. His eyes were already open. He had been awake the whole time. The older man stood and blocked the closest exit. That was when I understood there were 2 of them. The younger man pulled a small knife from his sleeve and told me to hand over my bag and phone. I gave him my bag immediately. When I handed him the phone, he looked at the lock screen and said, "Open it." I said no. He looked annoyed, like I had made his job take longer. The train started moving again. We were close to Park Street. Tunnel lights slid faster across the windows. The older man stood by the doors with my bag over his shoulder. The younger one kept the knife low by his thigh. He said, "Unlock it." I looked past him at the doors. Then I looked at the red emergency brake handle. I had never pulled one before. I didn't know if it would stop the train or just set off an alarm. But it was the only thing in that car they hadn't already touched. As the train entered the station, I grabbed the handle and yanked it down. The alarm screamed. The brakes locked hard enough to throw all 3 of us off balance. The younger man grabbed for me, and the knife cut across my forearm. I shoved him and screamed. For a few seconds, we were stopped with the platform right outside the windows and people staring in. Then the doors opened. I ran out bleeding and yelling for help. The younger man ran down the platform, but the older one tried to walk out calmly with my bag. 2 transit workers were coming toward the alarm. One grabbed him before he reached the stairs. Police caught the younger man 2 stations away. They told me later the delay had been real, but the men had been using delays to trap riders in nearly empty cars. One pretended to sleep. The other checked the intercom first. If the car stayed crowded, they got off. If it emptied out, they stayed. I needed 7 stitches in my arm. For weeks, I kept thinking about the moment he pulled that intercom cover down. People don't check whether help works unless they are planning for you to need it. I used to take the commuter train home when I lived outside the city. Most nights I got off at Westbrook Station, took the tunnel under the tracks, and crossed the lot to my car. It was boring, familiar, and lit well enough that I never worried about it. That night, the train was late. By the time we pulled in, it was after midnight, and only 3 of us got off. Me, a guy with a backpack, and a woman in a long coat. The station building was closed. The ticket windows were dark. I started toward the stairs that led to the pedestrian tunnel. That was when I saw yellow caution tape tied across the entrance. A handwritten sign said, "Tunnel closed. Use east exit." I had never used the east exit at night. Then a man in a reflective vest came out from beside the station building. He had a flashlight and a black beanie pulled low. "Tunnel's flooded," he said. "You need the east exit." He sounded like staff. Not friendly, not suspicious, just tired. The guy asked if there was another way to the main lot. The man shook his head. "Not tonight. I'll walk you over." That should have helped, but his vest had no train company logo. I also didn't see a radio or badge. Still, the platform was empty, and the other 2 passengers were already following him. So I followed too. He led us past the end of the platform, through a gate I had never noticed, and onto a narrow service path beside the tracks. I stopped. "I don't think passengers are supposed to be down here." He gave a small laugh. "Passengers aren't supposed to walk through a flooded tunnel either." The woman in the coat was behind me now. The guy with the backpack was ahead. I kept walking because turning around felt awkward. That was the stupidest reason to ignore a bad feeling. The path curved behind a storage shed, away from the platform lights. Then I heard another train coming. The man in the vest told us to stand close to the fence until it passed. The headlights came around the bend, bright and fast. The whole path shook as the train rushed by, and for a few seconds the sound was so loud nobody could have heard me scream. During those few seconds, I felt the woman's hand go into my jacket pocket. I turned and grabbed her wrist. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. The train was still roaring past, and the man in the vest stepped in front of me, blocking the path. The guy with the backpack stopped too. He wasn't confused anymore. He was watching me. That was when I understood all 3 of them were together. The train cleared and the world went quiet again. The woman said, "Just give us the keys." The man in the vest held out his hand. "Car keys, phone, wallet. Then you walk away." I said my car wasn't in the lot. He smiled. "You got off here. Everybody parks in the main lot." The way he said it told me they had done this before. The guy with the backpack stepped closer and unzipped the front pocket. I saw duct tape inside. Maybe it was for my mouth. Maybe for my wrists. I didn't wait to find out. I swung my work bag at the woman as hard as I could. It knocked her into the fence. Then I ran back toward the platform. The man in the vest caught my sleeve before I made it 10 feet. I twisted out of my coat and kept running. When I reached the gate, it was locked. He had locked it after we passed through. There was no way back onto the platform except over the fence, so I climbed. It was chain link and taller than me. The top edge tore both of my palms open. The woman grabbed my ankle from below. I kicked backward and felt my heel connect with something hard. She let go. I dropped onto the platform side, landed on my hip, and screamed because I wanted someone to hear me. Nobody did. So I ran toward the station building. The doors were locked, but there was an emergency call box beside the ticket window. I hit the button and shouted my location. Behind me, the man in the vest climbed back onto the platform. He started walking toward me, still holding my coat. I dragged a metal trash can in front of me. Then headlights swept across the parking lot. A taxi pulled into the station entrance. I ran straight to it and opened the back door. The man in the vest turned around and walked away like he had simply missed his train. Police came a few minutes later. The tunnel wasn't flooded, it wasn't closed. The sign had been written on the back of a timetable. The cameras showed the three of them wading through 2 trains before mine, watching who got off alone and where they parked. I stopped taking the late train after that. What bothers me most is how normal it looked at first. A closed tunnel, a tired worker, and 2 other passengers following directions. They didn't have to drag me off the platform. They just made the wrong lay look official enough for me to walk there myself. I fell asleep on the last train home. I had worked a double shift at a restaurant, and by the time I got on, I was so tired my eyes burned. The car was warm, the lights were dim, and the rocking of the train did what it always does when you are trying not to sleep. I remember putting my backpack on my lap. Then nothing. When I woke up, the train wasn't moving. At first, I thought we were stopped at a station. Then I looked through the window and saw no platform, just gravel, chain link fencing, and rows of empty trains sitting in the dark. I was in the train yard. The lights inside my car were still on, but half of them had dimmed. The doors were closed. The announcement screen only said "out of service." I was completely alone. I tried the doors first. They didn't open. I hit the emergency intercom beside them and waited for someone to answer. Nothing. My phone had 1 bar, but every call failed before it connected. I sent a text to my roommate with the train line and the words, "I'm stuck in the yard." It stayed on sending. That was when I saw a flashlight outside. A man was walking along the gravel beside the train, checking each car through the windows. He wore dark pants, work boots, and an orange vest. For 1 second, I almost cried from relief. I knocked on the glass. He stopped and looked up at me. Then he put 1 finger to his mouth. Not "hold on," not "stay calm." A quiet sign. "Don't make noise." That made me freeze. He looked around the yard, then stepped between 2 cars and disappeared. I backed away from the window. A minute later, the connecting door at the far end of my car rattled. Someone was trying to get in from the next carriage. I moved down the aisle and crouched behind the last row of seats. The door opened. The man in the vest stepped in, but he didn't call out for me. He didn't say he was transit staff. He walked slowly down the aisle, shining his flashlight under seats and into corners, like he was looking for something he had lost. Or someone. I could see his vest more clearly now. There was no logo, no badge, no radio clipped to his shoulder. He reached the seat where I had been sleeping and picked up my backpack from the floor. I must have dropped it when I woke up. He opened it, looked inside, then put it over his shoulder. That was when I knew he wasn't there to help. The train creaked somewhere outside. He stopped and listened. Then he said quietly, "I know you woke up." I stayed behind the seats with one hand over my mouth. He walked past me once, close enough that I could see mud on his boots. Then he turned around and came back slower. The flashlight beam slid over the floor, over the seats, over the metal poles. It stopped on my shoe. I ran before he reached me. I went for the front of the car because the rear door was behind him. He grabbed my jacket, but I slipped out of it and slammed into the operator cab door. It was unlocked. I fell inside, pulled the door shut, and found a latch. He hit the door a second later. Hard. The little cab shook. I wedged myself against the door and searched the control panel with shaking hands. I didn't know what anything did. Then I saw an emergency horn button. I held it down. The train horn blasted through the yard so loudly it hurt my ears. I kept pressing it. Again. Again. Outside, the man started yelling. He kicked the cab door twice, then ran back through the car. A real transit worker reached the train less than a minute later. Then another. They opened the outside door with a key and pulled me out through the cab. I was crying by then, still holding the horn button even after someone told me I could let go. The man in the vest was gone, but they found my backpack near the fence with my wallet missing. They also found bolt cutters and 3 other bags hidden under a parked maintenance cart. The transit police told me later that people sometimes fell asleep and rode past the terminal. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. Most were found quickly. The problem was that someone had learned that. Someone had been getting into the yard at night and checking out-of-service trains before staff finished their sweep. They weren't looking for passengers exactly. They were looking for phones, wallets, bags, anything left behind. But when they found a person, they adapted. I got lucky because I woke up before he reached me. I got lucky because the cab door was unlocked. I got lucky because I found the horn. But the thing that still bothers me is how calm he was when I first knocked on the glass. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just told me to be quiet. Like he had found someone awake in an empty train before, and already knew what came next.